Good morning, welcome back to another one of my live matches. This time I'm back on the canal. This is the Staffs Worcester Canal in Penkridge, and it is the second qualifier for the CT paper final. I need to fish this just to make myself eligible because I qualified on the first one, so happy days. Hopefully we'll catch a few fish. Now I've drawn 3 pegs below the motorway bridge, so it's going to be a bit noisy on camera. I've got Dave Smith to my right and then Pedro to his right in the bridge hole, and to my left I've got a gap. The next angler's round the bend, so we'll see. Might be all right, we'll see. Now I can't get in over there tight over because there's just roots everywhere, so I'm gonna have to fish off the front of them, and I'm planning on fishing ground bait with worms, casters and maggots there. And then to my left over to on the tins, which is still quite deep, it's around 3 foot deep, I'm going to be fishing bread to start with. We'll see. And then bread down the middle and casters as well. It's just cooled all in, so we'll give it a go and see how we do. So I normally like to feed my bread lines first, but as you can see the water's moving really hard. There's a lock obviously just opened. Little did we know on the morning just how much boat traffic we'd have during that day. There was a hell of a lot of boats. Anyway, the ground bait was Sonia bait, sweet skimmer and black mixed 50-50. And to that I put finely minced worm, some casters and a few dead maggots. Well, they weren't dead maggots, I took them out the bag and put them straight in water, in effect keeping them dormant. Bread lines I fed one at a top kit +1. I wasn't really expecting to catch too much there because, like I said, we'd had a few boats before the start anyway, and the canal was moving really hard. But it was somewhere to try, because checking back on my Facebook memories from last year, around this time I did well fishing bread. Same time of year, so we'll give it a go anyway. And like I said, 13 metres along the tins, which was around 3 foot deep. I put a bread line there as well, but just to start with. I was going to see how the peg progressed before I decided what I was going to do on that line later on. So I'll start the match at top 2 and 1 on a 6mm punch to see if I can catch me an early skimmer before the boats get silly. That's a 0.35 rig, that is, and I'm having to really work to control it, to hold it in the flow, to stop it racing and riding. Letting it run right down the peg, and I get my first fish, a little roach. Dave Smith to my right has just started on a whip, really close in, and he's had a couple of little perch while I'm doing this. Try it again. And I've put it in this time. I've laid it in upstream, so as he's got somewhere near the bottom before he gets over my feed. Just sticking a bit of water in my casters here to stop them turning any further. As you can see, I'm having to run the rig right down the peg, and that's where I get another bite. Another roach.
Moving, innit? Proper moving.
And that line's finished as soon as the boat goes over it. So next move is to try the worm rig. I'm using 6 elastics on that, and I've got a 4x14 intercarbon float on that one with a bulk and a couple of droppers. Size 16 N30 to O14 hook length, and a worm segment on the hook. I'll start catching some perch straight away. No damage to the worm, so straight back in. I put 2 balls of ground bait on that line, obviously with the particles in it, and then I'm loose feeding casters over the top. And there seems to be a few fish there early on. It's around 4 feet deep, that line is. Like I say, I couldn't get tight to the cover because of the roots all under the surface. And with the amount of flow there was, I just would not be able to run a rig through it. I'll be snagging up every few inches. So it's best to be safe and sorry and stay away from it. That little segment of worm's getting me a few bites. Mostly from little perch. But because I was catching smallish perch, I thought I'll try the maggot line over the top of it. Sometimes that can be better than using the worm. So this is again is a 6 elastic. It's got a F1 fine, this rig is. So that's again a 4x14 rig. I've used quite heavy rigs because of the flow. And a size 18 N10 hook. And obviously a single maggot on that. And as soon as it's set, I've just gone straight down the hole and I've hooked a decent fish. I'm guessing this is a big perch. Going down to a top kit. Nice and easy. And disaster. I wasn't pleased. Just pulled out. Obviously hadn't set the hook properly. That's the trouble with using small hooks for perch. You're not guaranteed to get them out.
Damn it.
Looking back at it, I could have dropped a maggot on the worm rig, which is a size 16 N30, obviously. A bigger hook, bigger gaped hook. It might have set that up a bit better, but we'll never know. I was angry, and I felt that had just cost me.
Fell off. Come on.
Never mind, get back on with it and see if I'm lucky enough to hook another. Although I carried on catching with a maggot. As you can see, they were a lot smaller, the fish now. So disappointed with that. Hate losing fish. This line was pretty good for a while, to be fair. The first hour was really good on it. So that nice daddy rough. Trouble is that when you're catching one of them, you're expecting your peg to be fading. They're usually the last fish to feed in your peg. Not always, but when you catch a daddy rough, you fear the worst. You can see I'm throwing some casters down the track there. I don't know why I bothered doing that, to be fair, because I never got a chance to fish the track again, as the canal was just so busy. You'll see in a bit what I mean. Still catching the odd fish on the maggot, so keep plodding on. Before I went on the worm line, I had a quick look on the bread over and had a little roach, but I just couldn't control it properly because it was flowing that hard. It just wasn't right. So eventually I decided to feed another worm line over there. Another ball of ground bait with some worms, casters and maggots in again. But I'm not coming off this while I'm catching fish. Still on a single red maggot. And I'm still so disappointed about losing that fish. Still good though, still some fish to be caught. It's all perch, and I know they look small, but perch are really dense and they're quite heavy fish. So it doesn't take a lot to build a weight. If you can keep them coming, you can have a great day. Still wasting casters by throwing them down the middle, I feel. But you never know. Usually when you start a match, there can be a few bouts early doors, but then it usually settles down and you'll get a lull in the traffic. And that's when your track line can be effective. So you've got to keep feeding it just in case. And Maggot's still working well at the moment. The reason I use double sixes on my worm and maggot lines is for the reason that a perch has got a really bony mouth, and using soft elastics often doesn't set the hook in a perch's mouth. So by using double sixes, it's quite a harsh strike. So it's a penetrating strike. And then as soon as you've hooked the fish, it does soften up a bit for playing the fish. Of course, you've still got to be lucky. As you've seen me lose that one fish, I just believe that I didn't set the hook fully in its mouth. And that can happen with perch. If I'd have been using a bigger hook, like I said, the N30, size 16, I'm pretty sure I'd have had that fish in the sprout bag. But, oh well, got to get over it. Even talking about it now, I'm still disappointed. Can't beat a big perch. Love catching big perch. And on this match, it would have been a real bonus. Now we got really busy now with the boats. You didn't seem to have your rig in the water for more than 2 or 3 minutes before there was another boat coming through, one way or the other. So I'm going to refeed that line. And this is when I feed the 13-metre line with some ground bait and worms as well. Theory is you're further away from the boat traffic, further out the canal. Because obviously where I'm fishing off the front of those bushes is still quite narrow. It's only about 9 metres wide there. So it's not far away from the boats coming through. Although I keep on feeding that as it's been a good line. The boats aren't really touching it. I know it's not wide there, but I'm on a little bit of a bend. So when the boat goes round the bend, the tail end of the boat is more or less my side of the canal. So it does help to keep them away from that area. It's one of them. It's an experiment. We'll see if it works. If not, oh well, at least I've tried it. And any bread that I put in that peg early on will have been washed away by now. Give that a little time to settle and I'll go back on the 9.5 metre line. This time I'm back on the worm now. Picking out a fairly small worm. Or trying to find a fairly small worm. Nipping the hook through the head and out through the side and then breaking it off at the saddle. and back over to the bushes to hopefully catch some more. Bites are slowing down now, but there's still some fish there to be caught. Dave and Pedro above me are really struggling, so I'm doing okay. My section, there's a peg the other side of the bridge in as well, so I can't see what's going on with him up there. And all the time I'm thinking I've lost this section because of that fish. But we'll see. Keep plodding on and see how we fare in the end. This section was used a few weeks ago in a Wednesday Open, and there was a lot of skimmers spawning in this area. The reason I put my worms in ground bait was because I thought maybe I'd have a chance of some bream or some skimmers there. Refeeding that line with another ball of ground bait with worms in has helped that peg come back to life a little bit. And there's still some perch to be caught. Happy days. They ain't big fish, but like I say, I mean, some of them, that's an half decent fish, that. 3-4 ounce. Time to try the 13 metre line, and first drop in, I have a decent perch. When I say decent, it's around the same size as the last one I just caught. Lovely. Unfortunately, that was the only one I caught there. Did this a hell of a lot on the day, moving out their way of boats. They just seemed to be non-stop. I didn't count the boats on the day. Somebody counted them up till 1 o'clock, and they reckon we had 37 up till 1 o'clock. We was fishing till 4, so we got another 3 hours. They were relentless. This boat here is it's a tea room boat. It comes from Teddesley Lock, takes a trip up to the boatyard in Penkridge with some passengers on, serving them tea and cakes and what have you. Big boat. And then it turns around in the bay and it comes back. Usually takes about an hour or so, I think the trip does. So no doubt he'll be on his way back before we finished. Right, I'm topping that line back up again now. I've had one fish over it, so it obviously worked for our fish. I'll top it up again and see if I can get another bite on it.
Not brilliant, is it?
With lots of movement on the canal, I don't think that much bait stays in your peg for too long. As you can see how hard that canal pulls. It's between two locks. It's only quite a short pound. So there's a lot of movement on that water, and that's all through the water. So I think you've got to keep topping up to keep fish in front of you, else they'll just drift down off your feeding zone with the bait that's been washed down the canal.
Slow down a bit. Yeah, very considerate, mate. Thank you.
Nice of him, wasn't it? Lovely bloke. Right, the peg's getting really hard now. The fish I am catching are quite small, and the bites are getting hard to come by. We're probably only about 2 hours into the match now. I'm still wasting casters by throwing them down the middle. Out the way of another boat. And another. And another one on his way. But there's still the odd fish to be caught to keep you interested. But like I say, the bites are becoming few and far between. Right, that worm line to the tins never worked out. Never had another bite on it. I've got to try something else to try and get me some bites, because I'm really struggling for bites at the minute. So I'll just mix some squats into some ground bait, and I'll try that at 13 metres. I'm running out of ideas, so it's worth a try.
50. Oh, I know where he is. He come past me, of course he did. He's next to that, you know where he said he's left the gap? He's through there, the end peg there.
And I'll drop a couple of balls there. While I give that a bit of time to work, I'll go back on the worm.
All the pegs there look nice, don't they?
They were relentless. I don't remember fishing a match that was this busy. Right, so the latest top up of ground bait on the front of the trees never produced any bites at all. So now I'm just trying putting some neat worm and a few casters in to see if that can snare me any fish. Another fresh piece of worm. No bites. The worm line's completely dead now. I can't get a bite anywhere over there. So that ground bait and squats have been in there for 15 minutes now. So I'm dropping a single red squat onto the squat rig and I'm going to give it a look. See if I can catch anything. I'm just looking for bites now. I don't care what they come off. So hopefully there'll be some roach over there willing to feed. Let's see if I can keep the rig in the canal long enough anyway. That failed to produce a bite. So back on the worm line. Hopefully something's turned up there. Back trying the squat again. See how much movement's on the back end of my pole as to how much the flow's moving. I'm having to chase the flow basically. Let the rig run with the flow, either whichever way it's running. I'm trying to let the rig run with it. Spending a bit of time on the phone to the couple of the other lads that were on the match. They were struggling as well. And eventually I get a bite on it. Nice little roach.
Yeah, boy. On the squat.
But that's the only bite I had on the line for a while. So back on the worm line. Here's the day boat coming back again. Right, I decided to put a little tiny pot on the tip of my top kit on the squat line. So I wet the pot, bait up the hook with a single red squat. I tried white squats on the hook and I never had an indication on a white squat. So trusty old red squat on the hook. I'm just pulling some ground bait up onto my tray here. So I say, wet the pot, pinch your squats in there, and then capping it off with a little bit of ground bait, just pressed in. I'll ship that out to the line where I'm fishing and I'll tap it out the cup. This worked instantly for a bite, but it was a very small roach. I don't care, it was a bite. This time I'm going out. Red squat on the hook. I'm just going to put a few squats in the pot. No ground bait this time. Wetting the pot helps keep the squats in the bottom of the pot. Stops them bouncing out while you're shipping out. Just a little pinch again. I wanted to try and keep the feed accurate. If it had been roach feeding freely in the area, I'd have catapulted them over. But because it was very hard, I tried to concentrate it by potting them in. Still keeping some casters going in on the worm line though, hoping that something will turn up there later on. I'm going to have a little run of fish on this line. Only 5 or 6 fish and they're very small, but the bites, I'm putting weight in the net. Obviously the camera angle's not brilliant for this line. Slightly better fish. Putting that little pot on my top kits definitely helped me get a few extra bites. Again, wetting the pot. Pinch of squats. There's probably about 15 squats in that pot. Ship the pole out and tap them out. Felt this was a slightly better fish, but turned out being a little perch. All welcome though. Incidentally, I used my X50 on this match because it's quite a narrow peg and 14.5 metres was the furthest I'm likely to be going. I felt I'd give the flagship pole a rest and use this one. And I must say, it fished a beautiful match, the pole did. It fished really well. Very impressed with it. Another busy runabouts. Squat line went quiet again, so back on the worm, see if I can catch another fish. And it just didn't happen. Feeding the neat shot worm didn't work, so I'm back to putting another ball of ground bait in. Wasn't just barges we had to put up with either. There was all sorts coming up and down the canal. Back on the squat. And another boat. This one, there was a boat coming in the opposite direction. And just before it got to me, this driver decided to throw it in reverse, right in front of Dave Smith's peg. I don't know why he did it, but they don't realise the damage they do to your peg when they do it. It completely turns the water all over. Nice little crossover for measure. It's a good job. I love canal fishing. But there's still the odd fish to be caught. The biggest roach of the day. Wouldn't mind catching one of them a chuck to the end. Probably an hour left of the match here. And the next chuck's a tiny fish. Probably the smallest roach of the day. As you can see how much I'm moving the pole there, and I'm shipping it back as I'm moving. That's trying to catch up with the tow and see if there's a fish right at the end of the flow, and it works. Catch a fish. It's only a tiny fish again, but still it's a bite.
Is it working? Is it really
And I'm just finishing the match off, having a look on the worm to see if there's any light fish to be caught there. And that was that.
That's it.
Really hard day on the canal. Fishing was okay, to be fair, and I'm pretty convinced it was the boat traffic that knocked it on the head so much. We did have a hell of a lot of boats. I can't imagine the fish could settle in the amount of movement they had. I'm pretty sure we'd have caught more fish had there been a little less traffic, but still, I feel I had a nice net of fish. When the scales come to me, £2.9 was winning my section, so I was happy to weigh £3 3 ounce and win the 50 quid. Happy days. I actually finished up 15th in the match, so if I hadn't qualified the first round, I'd have definitely have qualified on this one. Like I said, those perch weigh more than you realise. The match was won around the bend from where I am. There's a bridge with a stream, and 4 pegs in a row there had, I mean, £21 won the match. £12 was second, and then there was a 10 and an £8. So there was fish to be caught in areas, but unfortunately the rest of us struggled. So if you enjoyed watching that and you'd like to see more, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.
Yeah. We've got £9 of skimmers. Yeah. Lewis dropped his trousers behind the gun. All I could do, walking back there, he went, she said, "I'll go on social media if I was going to go on." That's not fine. White horse.
Yeah, boy, won the section. Happy days.